Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Maximize Your Ministry. This is session 5. This is our last session we've been covering over the last couple of weeks. How to maximize your ministry in 2019. As I mentioned before, one of my goals and one of the goals of Modern Inklings is to partner with you, ministry leaders, and to just equip you to do all the things that God has called you to be equipped to go further, to do greater things, to advance your ministries, to impact more people, but not at the expense of your own personal health, your own personal time, your family, those types of things. And that's what this whole series has been focused on, is how you can maximize your ministry in 2019, going further, making greater impact, being more efficient, while also lessening your workload. And so we've talked about 5 different areas. We've talked about how to maximize your communication, how to maximize your time, how to maximize your leadership, how to maximize your health. And tonight we're going to talk about how to maximize your team. And so if you're joining us live, welcome. I'm so glad you made it here. If you're watching this on the replay, I hope this is valuable to you. I hope that it's just as impactful for you whenever you're watching it as it is to us today. And so, again, I just want to welcome you. It's not too late to invite your friends, those of you who are live. It's not too late. You can still invite them. And so if you want to invite anybody that you feel like this would be helpful for them, impactful for them, you can do it 2 ways. You can do it at send them to university.moderninklings.com, where they can sign up and be a part of the course, and they will get all the extra material that will come in the days and weeks ahead. Or they can just go to YouTube. You can send them the link, or they can search for Maximize Your Ministry, and the live broadcast should show up for them. And so, if you have anybody that you feel like this would be beneficial for, go ahead and send it out to them. Invite them to be a part, and we would love to have them join us. If you are in the course interface in Modern Inklings University, I want to encourage you to jump off of there, go to the bottom. There's a link. I'm going to click on that. It's going to kick you over to YouTube. And over on YouTube is where the chat will be. And so I want to invite you to do that. Click on the link, jump over to YouTube, and use the chat feature. Any questions that you have, anything that you're curious about, anything that I say that doesn't make sense, or that you would like me to go into further, at the very end, we will go into the chat, look at all the questions, and answer any there. And so please do that. Click on that. Go over to YouTube. Jump in the chat. Interact with each other. And and just send me any of your questions that we'll cover there at the end of this session. I also want to remind you, those of you who have been with us throughout the 5 sessions, I've been mentioning the Ministry Lab. It will be kicking off in a couple weeks. And so we're launching the Ministry Lab to create a space where you can do courses and workshops for ministry leaders to, again, grow their ministry, grow their capabilities, grow their leadership, grow their teams. And so I want to invite you right now, as we're getting ready to launch. It's going to be we're going to do a beta launch, and so everybody who joins on the beta launch is going to lock in a $19.99 a month rate for lifetime. As long as you are a part of the Ministry Lab, you will keep that $19.99 rate. And so now is a great time to jump in. We're going to add more courses as the months go on. There's currently, I think, 6 courses already. There's a full discipleship, 5-level discipleship course that's going to be there. There's 3 of the 5 that are already in there. A couple other courses are added in. And so we have 6 total courses already in place. And so I want to invite you to go on over and check it out, university.moderninklings.com. The Ministry Lab is going to, hopefully, the goal is that it will be a resource and a tool to help ministry leaders, regardless of where they are, whether they're starting off or whether they've been seasoned veterans, to teach them and train them the tools that they need to be more impactful, to be more efficient. I know for myself, I went to Bible college. I've been in ministry 20 years, and there are a lot of things that I've learned the hard way as I've gone through that I didn't learn in Bible college, or I didn't learn in my internships and those types of things. There's so many things about ministry that need to be learned, and there's just no way that you can be trained fully in all of them. And so the goal for Modern Inklings and the Ministry Lab is to create a space where we can fill in those gaps, because none of us, whether you went to Bible college or a leadership college or any sort of training, or maybe you were mentored by a pastor who just saw something in you and believed in you and wanted to send you out, whatever your path has been into ministry, I guarantee you there are gaps. I guarantee you there is something you've run across that you just didn't know what to do or how to handle it. And the goal for the Ministry Lab is to create more courses and more workshops that will help fill in those gaps. And so even as you maybe look at the lab, or you just think about things that you felt like you wish you would have known at a different time, you wish you would have known earlier on in your ministry, and you think younger ministry leaders would be valuable for them to learn it earlier. Let me know. Put it in the chat or send it to me. Go on to university.moderninclusive.com or moderninclusive.com and let us know, because we're looking for we want to create courses that matter, courses that really answer the tough questions that you need answered. And we don't want to just create courses that we say, hey, we think this would be good and we're going to throw it out there. We want to do things that are actually impactful for you and other ministry leaders. And so if you're not seeing what you're looking for in the Ministry Lab, let us know. We'll create something and put it on there for you. So again, it's going to be opening up soon. So the Ministry Lab, university.moderninclusive.com, lock in the beta rate of $19.99 for life as long as you stay a member. So again, welcome tonight, and I hope you check out the Ministry Lab. So tonight we are going to be talking about how to maximize your team. And so I'm going to pray, and then we're going to dive right into the material. Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for tonight. We thank you for the opportunity to come together, even whether we are here online, live, or whether we're here virtually with someone down the road. God, I pray that this session is impactful. I pray that it's helpful. I pray that it's meaningful. God, I pray that you will help me to get out of the way. God, that you'll speak to those who are hearing. I pray that you will help us. Help us as your church to make a difference. Help us as your church to be more effective, impact your kingdom. God, that we will keep you first. And God, as we look at maximizing our teams, I pray that you help us to remember how to serve. God, as ministry leaders, we constantly need to be reminded how to serve well, how to take care of the people you've entrusted to us, how to bless them and strengthen them and send them out. And so I pray that as we're going through the material tonight, that you will speak to us in the areas that we need to improve, the areas we need to develop and strengthen, and what we can do to maximize our teams. And we thank you, God, that you've called us, that you use us, that you put us in places that we can make a difference for you and for those we come in contact with. And so we praise you. We thank you. Be with us tonight. In your name, amen. All right. So maximizing your team. Now, maybe you're on here and you don't have a team. Maybe you have a volunteer team. Maybe you have a staff. Maybe you have a small staff, a big staff. Or maybe it's just you. Maybe it's you're just one person and you're doing your best on your own. Maybe you're a church planter and you're just trying to make ends meet. Maybe it's you and a spouse, or you and a partner. Whatever the case is, whether you have a huge team, a small team, or no team, this is going to be important, because the goal of ministry, regardless of the level you're at, is always to grow a team, develop your team, and expand it out. So, and we're not just talking about your staff. Some of us are blessed to have large staff members, not staff members who are large, but a large staff. We have staff that we can delegate large pieces of the ministry to, and they have teams under them. And others of us, we just don't have that. And so, it's important to remember that Christianity and our relationship with God was always meant to be done in tandem with each other, in community, on teams. Even when we look at Jesus, when we look at his disciples, he didn't just choose 12 people to send out. He chose 12 people to be a team, to come together, to work together. And even through the course of their ministry after Jesus died and rose again, we see them working together at different points along the way, where they still operated, even if it was a loose team, they still operated as a team, and they built greater teams under them. And so the team dynamics of our faith and our relationship with Jesus and the development of the church is absolutely necessary. And so if you're currently listening to this and watching this and you don't have a team, first of all, I don't want you to be discouraged. I want to encourage you, continue to look for people who will come alongside you. Continue to look for people who will partner with you, who will stand shoulder to shoulder with you and carry the burden of ministry and minister along with you. If you do have a team, I want to challenge you to, as we're talking tonight, to assess how well you are managing and developing your team. Where are you? Do you have a team where they just under you and you just kind of hands off and they do their thing and you do your thing and you're just kind of loosely on the same team doing the same thing, but really everybody's on their own page? Are you a team leader where you're controlling everybody under you? You keep them under your thumb because you want to keep control of things. You don't want yourself to look bad. You don't want the ministry to struggle. You don't want the negatives. You're playing defense all the time with your team, but it's creating tension and friction and frustration for you, for them. Tonight I want you to assess, where are you? Where are you in this process of developing a team, growing a team? Because I believe, and I would argue, that when it comes to successful leadership and successful ministry, it's all about the team. Some ministry leaders, you don't have any choice but to just do things on your own because you're in a small location, you don't have a lot of people. But even then, I would argue there are people who, even if they're given small tasks and small responsibilities, they'll be a part. They just want to be a part. They want to be a part of advancing the kingdom of God. They want to be a part of seeing God move through them. They don't just want to be spectators. They don't want to just sit on the sidelines and sit on the bench. They want to be put in and be a part of what God's doing, even if it's a small part. And so, as we're going through this, I want to encourage you, build teams, because teams are where ministry is all where it's at. You talk to any church planter that is out there trying to grow a new fledgling church. The greatest need most of them have are volunteers or team members who will be in it together, who will walk with them, who will stand beside them, who will pray with them, who will hold them accountable, who will put their shoulder to the plow and help make things happen. Every ministry leader should, at some level, develop a team. And probably one of the greatest complaints I get, or maybe the greatest, the most common question I get is, how do I get more volunteers? How do I develop my team better? And so that's what we want to focus on tonight. Now, the first thing that I want to encourage you, as we're talking about how to maximize your team, the first thing I want to encourage you to do is start prioritizing your team. Start prioritizing them. I've been in a lot of ministries, and I've observed even ministries I haven't been part of, and one of the things that I see a lot, quite often, is I see what ministry leaders will have a tendency to do is that they will focus on the crowd. And so if you imagine 3 circles, you imagine ministry leaders in the middle, and then outside of that is the staff or the paid group of people, or maybe your board or your core leaders or whatever that is. So middle is you, the ministry leader. The next circle is the inner circle of leaders, board, staff, whoever that may be. And then the next circle would be volunteers. And then maybe you could even say the last, the fourth circle would be just the congregation, just, your everyday Joes who come on Sunday. They're not really super involved. They're not really super engaged, but they're there when they can be, and they call your church their church home. And so they're kind of on that outer circle. Well, what I see a lot of times is I see lead pastors or even departmental pastors. What they will do is they will sit there in the middle, and then they will focus their attention on that fourth ring or that third ring. They will focus on the crowd. They will focus on the congregation. They'll focus on trying to engage them and spend time with them and meet with them and go have coffee and go have dinner, invite them over to their house. They'll spend a lot of time, and I understand the mentality and the perspective. The idea is that if I, the pastor, or I, the ministry leader, if I engage with newcomers and with the people on the fringes, and it will keep them involved, or it keeps them attached to us and our faith community, and me as the pastor, it keeps them attached, which from a spiritual perspective is better for those people on the fringe. And then from maybe an organizational perspective, it keeps our numbers growing. It keeps people coming in because they're engaged with our faith community, engaged with me. They see me as their pastor. They see us as their church. And so if I spend time with them, it'll keep them connected, and we'll continue to grow. And there's nothing wrong with that mentality. There's nothing wrong with that even that logic, because to a certain degree that is true. However, the results that I usually see is that because the pastor, whether it's lead pastor, departmental pastor, because they are spending so much time on the outer edges of those circles, they're most often neglecting that inner circle that's immediately close to them, whether it's their staff or their core volunteers or their board. And part of the idea behind that is that we assume that because they're a part of that inner circle, because they're our staff members, or because they are our board members, or they're our core leaders of the church, they don't require as much time. They don't require as much hands-on with them because, well, they're leaders. They're self-sufficient to a certain degree. They're high capacity a lot of times. They just don't need a lot of our time and attention because they're bought in. If they're staff members, we're paying them to be here, so they're not going anywhere. And if they're board members or core leaders, well, they became board members or core leaders because they're bought into what we're doing. And so we're not as concerned about them leaving the church, and they kind of can do their own thing. And so we spend our time on the outside assuming that inner circle is okay. But what inevitably is really truly happening is that inner circle, maybe for a while they are okay. They don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want you looking over their shoulder. They don't want you spending a lot of time telling them what to do. They just want you to give them direction, give them vision, give them insight, give them even constructive criticism, and then they want you to leave them alone and let them do their thing. But the problem is what they don't tell you is that they want you. They want you, the ministry leader. They want your attention. And they don't want your attention as far as like they want you to do something for them, but they want relationship with you. They want you to invest in them, particularly if you are 35 plus and your team is 35 and below. If you're leading a millennial team, part of why they're on your team is because they want to be mentored. They want to be grown. They want to be developed. And so if you're spending all of your time on the outer core or on the outer rings and not investing into that inner circle, well, then what's happening is you're not prioritizing them. You're not investing in them. You're not mentoring them. You're not giving them, even sometimes maybe not even giving them the skill development or the relationship that they're looking for. And so the first thing we need to talk about is you need to prioritize them, put them first. Put them kind of at the forefront of it. It's not always even about the amount of time. It's usually about the quality of time. It's about, are you investing quality time with them? And it goes beyond just the annual review, or it goes beyond the weekly meeting that you have with them. And I'm not saying you have to be best friends with them. I'm not saying that you have to spend every weekend hanging out. For you have to assess your team, and you have to assess where they are, and you have to assess even individually who needs more time and attention. You need to understand what's valuable to them. For some of them, they don't need more time, they just need more attention. And for some of them, they don't need time or attention, they just need a little bit of praise from time to time. Or they maybe just need a little more clarity in their tasks or their job description, or what you're asking of them. You need to know your individual team members to know what it is you need to give to them. Because if you're spending all of your time on the outer edges and neglecting them, there will come a time where either they mentally check out and they go on autopilot and they just do their job, or they go somewhere else. And a lot of times you have no idea why. Why did they leave? Where did they go? Why are they not still on the team? What was wrong? And you never really get a clear answer, and you're never really satisfied with why they left. Well, a lot of times it's because you've spent so much time on the outer edge that you didn't invest in them and spend the time with them that they needed. And so we need to prioritize them. Jesus knew this. We see Jesus spend lots and lots of time with the crowd. He spent time with the crowd all the time. He ministered to the crowd. He did miracles with the crowd. But when we look at John, the book of John, we see that Jesus actually spent quite a bit of time with his disciples. And even throughout the Gospels, we see that there are certain things that only the disciples received from him that the crowds didn't. Most of all, the disciples received personal relationship with Jesus. The crowds came and they received what they were looking for. They came for the miracles. They came for the spectacle. They came because they just heard about Jesus and needed to see what was going on. And some of them came genuinely looking for what Jesus was offering. Most of them came because they were looking for freedom from the oppression of the Romans. But the disciples, they got Jesus. Probably the deepest experience of Jesus that any of us have. Because they were able to sit with him, they were able to talk with him, they were able to see his expressions, they were able to even you maybe with your spouse or maybe with your team members, something's going on and all it takes is a look and you guys know what's going on. Well, how many times did that happen with the disciples? How many times was Jesus with the crowds and something happened and Jesus gave them a look or they gave him a look, and there was this communication between them that nobody else in the world had with Jesus, because the disciples had it with him, because they spent so much time and so much intimate experience with him that they just knew him so well. Now, does your team know you at that same level? Does your team feel like they're that connected with you? Or is there a disconnect? Or are they just simply working for you? Now, probably most of us would never say that. We would certainly, never want that to be the perspective of our team, that they're just working for us. But if I were to walk in and I were to sit down with your team and I were to ask them about their relationship with you, or if I were to ask them how things were going, working for you, what would they say? How would they process through that with me? In a completely open, free environment where there were no repercussions and your feelings weren't going to get hurt and I was the only one to hear it, what would they tell me about their relationship with you? Now, you can't keep everybody satisfied and happy, but what I do know is that if you invest in your team and you hire good quality team members and you invest in them and you pour into them, what you will see is you will actually see more impact throughout your faith community than you will spending all that time with those people on the fringes. Because the idea is that if you, the leader, spend the most time with your inner core, you spend your time developing them, you spend your time teaching them, you spend your time taking everything you know and you invest it into them. Well, then what happens is they then turn around and do it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And so as the core is strong and as it builds out every other ring, it gets strong, then the outer rim stays strong as well. Because what happens is as you invest in your core and your core invest in their leaders and the leaders then invest into the congregation, well, then the congregation is more connected. They're more bought in because every level of the ring is strong. But if you jump over 2 and 3 rings to get to the outer edge, well, then you have a strong core. Then you have an outer edge that's fighting to be connected. And the other 3 rings are struggling. And you will never have a faith community that grows, that becomes all that it can be, if that's the process that's happening, if that's what's occurring, if you're spending all of your time on that outer edge. Because what will happen is you may grow. You spend all that time on the outer edge, you may grow numerically. But probably what's happening is your back door is wide open. You're pulling people in, but as quickly as you're pulling them in, there's nobody to keep them. And they're going right out the back door. Partially because if you're spending all that time with people on the fringes, then you condition them that that's the relationship they're going to have with you. And then when they move into the inner circles and you disengage with them because you're spending time with the outer core, then what's going to happen is they're going to feel like you've abandoned them. They're going to feel like you spent all this time investing in them, and all you were really worried about is getting them in. Because once they were in, then you went on and you went to someone else. That's not great for longevity. That's not great for building a healthy vibrant church that's going to last. And so, though there were maybe people on the edges that think that they should have time with you, they think that they deserve time with you. The reality is the people that really deserve your time are the people that are in the inner cores. And if you have people in the outer core that are demanding your time, probably that should be a red flag. That should be a red flag that maybe there's something unhealthy going on. Maybe there's some dependency they're looking for. They may just like you. They may just want to hang out with you. But quite honestly, if that's the case, they're probably not demanding it. They're probably not offended that they're not getting enough time with you. They're probably just going to naturally build a relationship with you. And so the first thing tonight that I wanted to touch on was prioritize your team. Put them first. Just as Jesus knew he couldn't change the world with the crowd, because in the end, the crowd was gone. In the end, the crowd was completely gone. They all abandoned Jesus. When Jesus is on the cross, it's just the disciples. It's just 11 of the 12 remained. And even they scattered. But they came back because of the investment he put into them, because of the time he invested in them, because of the training and the leadership and all of the things that he put into those 12. That's why we do what we do today. Because he invested in those 12, and those 12 then went on and changed the world. He knew the crowd wasn't going to do it. He knew he needed those 12 to do it for him. And so let's take a note from Jesus' book, and let's prioritize our team first. The second thing then is invest in their success. Invest in the success of your team. Now, depending on where you are, maybe you have a staff that you've had, turnover. People have come in, they've gone out, come in, gone out. That's never an easy thing to go through. Depending on how it happens or what the circumstances are, it could be harder than maybe it should be. But staff turnover in ministry is pretty natural. It's a pretty common thing, and quite honestly, we should be relatively used to it, I guess. If you're part of a church staff that you've had people on staff for 10, 15, 20 years, that's wonderful. That's amazing. And I think that should be celebrated. At the same time, I would be curious if I were to come into your team, if I were to come into your faith community and kind of assess things, look around, process through, would I find that because your staff has been on for so long, have they settled into a certain complacency? Have they settled into this is how things are and this is how we do things, and they're not pushing the envelope anymore? Now, if you're the type of pastor, you're type of the ministry leader that you're pushing the envelope and being innovative and challenging them to think, maybe that may not be the case. But that's usually what I find. Usually what I find with people who have been on staff for 10 plus years, usually there's a complacency they've fallen into. There's a groove that they found, and they're not really getting out of that any longer. And either they need to get out of the groove, or they need to move on somewhere else and bring someone fresh in. Not because they're not doing a good job, but because there isn't anything that's innovative. There's nothing that's pushing the envelope. There's nothing that's stretching the team any longer. Staff turnover is a normal thing. It's a part of the kingdom. If you're hiring a new kids pastor or a new youth pastor who right out of college or right out of high school or right out of leadership school or whatever the case may be, if you're bringing them on, you may have the expectation they're going to be there forever, or for the next 10 years, the next 8 years. Most likely you're going to give them for about 3 years, maybe 5 if you're lucky. And you can lament that, and you can fight that, and you can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, every staff member that works for us, they're on loan to us by God himself. We don't always know what the plans for those individuals are. Our job as stewards for God of the people he's given us is we spend the time that we have with them, investing in them, developing them, growing them, so that when they move on, that they will be effective for the kingdom of God later. I can't tell you how many pastors and how many ministry leaders that I have talked to that they leave where they are not because it was necessarily time for them to move on. They move on because they're just so beat up, they can't take it anymore. They go somewhere else just to have a fresh start. And sometimes they have contributing factors. Sometimes they've created the problems. Sometimes they've done it to themselves. But other times it's happened to them. They work for a ministry leader who just beats them up and abuses them. I remember when I was just out of college, just out of Bible college, I had a friend in 2 years, within 2 years of our graduation. He graduated same year I did. Within 2 years, he had been in two different youth pastor positions. He had gone to one. I think he was there for maybe 8 months. He was a great speaker. He was a great leader. He was strong personality. Had a lot of potential. I think he lasted maybe 8 months. Took a couple months off. Went back out. Was in his other position for less than a year. And within 2 years, he had been in two positions. And I remember talking to him when he left the second position. And both positions had been rough. The lead pastor had just not taken well to him. And admittedly, there were probably some elements of his personality that were just, he was a strong leader and a little bit louder at times and kind of forced his ideas through. And so, there was room for him to grow. But rather than developing him and growing him and taking the time to help him through that, what happened is they stifled him and verbally abused him and just kind of put him in a box and wouldn't let him grow. And what happened is that after those two positions and after those 2 years, I remember talking to him after the second one. And I remember him looking at me and saying very, definitely, I don't think I'll ever go back into ministry again. And I remember breaking my heart, thinking he's a statistic. Because I remember my first semester, my first week of Bible college, and them saying, out of all of you in this room, only 10% of you are going to graduate and go into ministry. And of that 10%, only 30% of you will be in ministry 10 years from now. And within 2 years, he was out, saying that he was never going back. Now, the silver lining of it all is that maybe 6 years ago, he went back into ministry. It took him 15 years to do it, but he did. He went back into ministry, and he's doing wonderfully now. He's doing an amazing job as an executive pastor, and I can't be more proud of what he's done and his resolve to continue to push and continue to come back and fight hard and to go back into ministry and really fulfill the calling that God has put on his life. But I often wonder, would that have been different had his lead pastors in those two positions, if they would have, instead of being frustrated with him, threatened by him, and stifling him, what if they would have just invested in him? What if they would have just poured some time and attention into him? And what if they would have kept in mind that he was only there for a while? Hopefully less, hopefully more than 8 months or a year. But what if they would have just understood that he was there for a couple years, 3 years, and their job as a member of the body of Christ was to develop him so that when he moved on, he would be better off. I know that I have been blessed because almost every position that I have been in, the pastor, whatever, the youth pastor, the lead pastor, the executive pastor, young adult pastor, whoever it was that I was working for, they invested in me so that the next position, I was ready for it. I was prepared for it. I was invested in. They taught me the skills that I needed. They taught me the abilities. They taught me the mindsets. They taught me the little tips that you don't learn in Bible college, or the little nuances that, unless you are mentored and trained, you just don't know those unless you figure them out yourself. I had the privilege of having pastors along the way who invested in me and taught me those things. And so for you, when you look at your team and you look at where they are you investing in them? Are you pouring into them? Are you teaching them skills? Are you keeping in mind that they're going to leave someday and you want them to be better off when they leave than when you got them? When they came on your staff, maybe they were brand new, maybe they had no idea what they were doing, and you want to invest in them so that when they leave, they will be light years ahead of everybody that is right along with them. I know for myself that has been my goal when I have team members under me, my goal is always to say, okay, how can I invest in you so that when you move on, you're going to be way better off than had you just been on your own or somewhere else with someone else. I want to be the type of ministry leader who invests, who pours into, who challenges, and who sets people up for success. So think about your team members. Think about where they are. Think about what you've done in their lives so far. Have you invested in their success? Have you invested helping them, getting them ready for the next position? Because most likely your youth pastor, your kids pastor, they may not be in those positions forever. Particularly youth pastors, as much as, I started out as a youth pastor. I wanted to be a youth pastor my whole life. And about a year into it, I realized I was terrible at it. And luckily, the lead pastor that I was working for, he had invested in me in such a way that I wasn't, that I could go beyond just being a youth pastor, that I was prepared to step into a different role because he had invested and taught me how to do things outside of youth ministry. And so how many of your staff members currently are probably going to be in a different role, a different place 2 years from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? What can you do now to develop them? Because here's the thing. If you're developing them now so that they'll be successful later, well, what happens is that you gain the benefits of them getting better now. So let's just say you have your staff member for the next 3 years. And so you're going to invest like crazy into their development, into their skills, into their spiritual life. You're going to invest like crazy into their leadership. You're going to invest in their ability to be relational and connect with people. You're going to invest. Well, as you're investing and they're getting better, your congregation and your faith community and your team, they reap the benefits of that. They get to see all the benefits that come from that. And the other side of that is that when you've invested so much in them, there's a possibility that they will be so loyal that they don't want to go anywhere else. You have groomed them and invested in them and prepared them to be amazing in whatever position they go on to. And because you invested so much, because you prioritized them, and because they saw that you valued them, they may not go anywhere. They may stay with you because they know if they stay with you, that they're going to get your time, your attention, your investment, all the things that you've learned in your ministry years, all the nuances and tips and tricks and all those things that you've picked up along the way, you're giving it to them. And that is invaluable. Some of the greatest ministry relationships that I've seen are pastors who pour into other people, and those people just stay with them all up until the time that pastor moves on, and the person they poured into just moves right into their position. Because their loyalty and love for that person, that pastor, that ministry leader, and that congregation or faith community was so high because of the investment they received. And so, are you investing in your people? Again, we go back to Jesus. We look at him. He invested so much into his disciples. He at one point in his ministry, he sends them all out. He says, you guys go out. You go do it. You go spread the gospel. You go tell people. Because he understood that his investment into them was so valuable for the next thing. Because there was going to come a time where he was going to be gone. There was going to come a time where he wasn't in the equation anymore. And that they were going to have to do their thing. They were going to have to go out on their own and spread the gospel and be him to other people. He understood that. And so he invested like crazy into those men for those 3 years. Because he understood what was at stake. He understood the payoff in the end. He understood that he wasn't the central point of their ministry. He is, as far as Jesus, and he's the relationship that we're all seeking and our answer and all of those things. But he wasn't always going to be with them to be at the forefront of the ministry. He wasn't always going to be with them, and they weren't always going to be watching and observing. There was going to come a point where he was going to be out and they were going to be doing it. And so he understood the importance of investing. He understood the importance of training and developing them and teaching them the skills. And if you'll do the same, if you will invest in your team today, then they will be light years ahead, and they will be way more effective for you, way more effective for your faith community and your team and your community. They will make a greater impact because you're investing in them. And so, and for some of us, that's hard because then we begin to ask, well, how do I develop them? I would, at the very least, I would start by just giving them books. Maybe you don't have a ton of time to sit down and meet with them or mentor them or whatever. I would say if you don't have the time now to do that, then just start giving them books that they'll read. You discuss, maybe you discuss as a team, but work towards giving them more time and attention and more development and training. I know there was one pastor that I worked with. Every staff meeting, he would start every staff meeting. So he would meet with the pastoral staff. At the time, I wasn't on the pastoral staff. I was just an underling at that point. But every time he had staff, he would pull every employee of the church together, and he would spend 15 minutes teaching us something, some sort of leadership principle, some sort of spiritual principle. He would do a 15-minute teaching, investing into all of us, and then he would go off with the staff and have staff meeting. Well, for me, who I was just an underling at that point, that was huge for me. That meant a monumental amount to me because he didn't need to do that for me. I was just some dude on his staff that was just trying to figure out what I was doing. I was young and dumb, and I had no idea what was going on. But he spent that time, even if it was in a group setting, he spent the time, and I took furious notes, and I put all that stuff into practice because it was valuable. And then a few years later, he ended up mentoring me personally, and and it all started with those meetings at staff meeting, just because he felt it was necessary and it was priority to me with everybody that was employed at the church. All of us who were staff members or who were employees were there in the room. And so again, invest in your team. Invest in your team because they're worth it, because they're on loan to you, because the kingdom of God needs a lot more high caliber, high capacity, high impactful ministry leaders spreading the gospel, advancing the kingdom, and making a difference in this culture, in this community. And so those are my 2 points tonight. Maximize your team by prioritizing them and investing in their success. And so I'm going to jump over to see where you guys are, see if we have any questions. One of the questions that I get a lot of times when it comes to investing is, what do we have, or what kind of material should I use? Should I use a discipleship course, or should I use should I use a book, or what should I use? And quite honestly, there is no easy answer to that, because it depends on where you're at. It depends on what's available to you. It depends on financially what you're capable of, or what's going on. And so what I say, again, as I said before, start with books. Just buy everybody a book and give it to them, and read a few chapters each month, and then sit down and discuss it. Do those types of things. What I would encourage you at some point is to develop a strategic process of leadership, to develop a leadership pipeline of training, or to purchase or invest in one for them. So one of the things that we do at Modern Inklings is we have a 5-level discipleship leadership training course. And so we start with leading yourself, and we go all the way to leading a department. Because one of the things that I've learned over the years, and all the leaders that I've trained and developed, there has to be a strategic process they go through, otherwise they get lost. And quite honestly, you get lost. I know for myself, when I was doing leadership development before, if I didn't have a strategic process, then I didn't have anywhere to take them. It was just random. I would teach them this thing and then this thing, and they're having this problem, well, let me teach you this thing. Well, when I sat down and actually created a process that focused on leadership skills and character traits, and moved them from leading themselves to leading others, to leading teams, to leading leaders, and then leading departments, when I created that process, well, then it all became a lot simpler, because when they started out, and if they moved through, the curriculum answered so many questions for them. The training equipped them with so many skills and tools and abilities that I didn't have to do, because the training did it for them. And then I just had to fill in those gaps. And so I would say, if you're struggling with where to start in investing in your team, start with books, number one. But then number two, either develop yourself or invest in a discipleship leadership training program for them, um, because you're going to see a return on investment um, in ways that you can't even imagine. Um, Remember, even in this maximize your ministry, this whole the all 5 of these sessions, part of the process and part of the goal of all this is to help you with maximizing your time, help you get more done doing less. Well, if you invest into a leadership development program that's going to train your team and develop them, and it's not something that you're having to do, well, then you're going to reap the benefits of that process without having to invest into it yourself. And so, so I would uh, encourage you um, to start with books at the very least, but then as soon as you can, move to some sort of discipleship process, either one you develop or one you purchase. And so, another question I get a lot of times is, what do I do with millennials? Again, if you're 35 plus, 40 plus, if you've been in ministry a long time, and now you have 20 somethings or early 30 somethings on your team, and they're an anomaly for you. I get it. I get that question constantly, and so much so that's the book that's in process of publishing. That's what it's on. It's on how to lead millennials, and one of the things that you have to remember is that, and I'm sure you know, is that they don't learn the same way you did. They didn't grow into ministry or develop the same way you did. One of the things, and maybe one of the pivotal points that you have to keep in mind when you're training millennials is, number one, the assumption is that millennials think they know everything. That's absolutely not the case. What millennials do know is that they can get any information at any time. Because if you ask them a question, if they run across something they don't know, what do? They pull out their phones and they Google it. Or they go to YouTube and they watch a training on how to do it. The amount of information that's available to millennials is off the charts astronomical. Something you and I can't even fully fathom at their age. So they have an inundation of information. The problem is that they don't always know what to do with the information, and they aren't always even able to differentiate between the good information and the not so good information. That's where you fit in. You fit in with being a filter for them of the information, and then teaching them what to do with the information they have, how to use it. What do they do with it? When you teach them those things, when you teach them what to do with the information, how to apply it, and you teach them how to filter it, well, then you become invaluable to them. Because then they start looking to you for answers. Not for more information, but for answers. And so if you're struggling, or if you have a millennial team and you're trying to figure out how to get them motivated or how to maximize them, start there. Start with that. Start with synthesizing information into action for them, and filter that information down for them. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is give them positive feedback and constructive criticism. The annual review is something that just does not work anymore. And it doesn't work. I would argue, I don't think it ever really worked, but it certainly doesn't work any longer. For millennials in particular, they're looking for constant feedback. They want feedback now. They want to know that what they did last week was good or not good. They want to know how they can improve. When they walk off the stage after they've preached, they want somebody to tell them, hey, great job. Here's what you need to develop, or here's what you need to change. A couple weeks ago, we had a speaker in to our church. He was one of my former students, a good friend of mine, a millennial, 20-something, and he preached the first service. He walked off stage, walked back to his table, selling books. I walked back to talk to him, and he turned to me and he said, "What can I do differently?" Which is a testament to him, testament to his ability to constantly be learning and being open to criticism. But at the same time, it was just a great example of how millennials are. They want that criticism, not criticism. They want constructive insight on how they can improve what they're doing. And so I would say, don't wait for that annual review to give them all the knocks on what they're doing wrong and tell them what they're doing right. Don't do that. Do it on a weekly basis, even if it's just walking by and saying, hey, I caught your sermon last week in youth group, and I just want to let you know that it was really good. I noticed this could be shifted or adjusted or whatever, but other than that, you did a great job. You do that, and number one, you're going to invest into their abilities and skills. They're going to get better. And number two, you're going to endear them to you, and their loyalty to you will grow, because they see that you're invested into what they're doing, that you're concerned about it, that you want them to do well. And so that's I get a lot of millennial questions on how to develop millennial teams. And so if you have any other further questions on millennial teams, go ahead and send those to me. I'll be happy to help. Again, like I mentioned, that's what my book is on, how to develop millennial teams and how to how to lead in the millennial age. And so I have lots of material that we could spend on that. So, well, I don't see any questions tonight, and so this is it. This is the end, session 5. So for everybody who was here at any point along the way, I just want to tell you thank you for joining in. Thank you for being a part. It's been a great 5 sessions for me. I hope it was for you. If you're watching this on the replay, if you're watching this in the course, please send me any questions that you have. I'll continue to monitor those questions, try to answer them. If you have any insight or anything you want to add to the conversation, please put that in the chat box. Again, if you're looking for the Ministry Lab and you want to look into that and be a part of that, you can go to university.moderninklings.com, or you can go to moderninklings.com and just follow the link to the university from there. I'm just so thankful for all of you, because as ministry leaders, a lot of times we're marginalized in our communities and our cultures, and so many of you are fighting to make an impact. Even though you're marginalized, and even though you may be pushed into a corner, you're constantly trying to reach your people. You're constantly trying to invest in them and make a difference. And I applaud you. I'm so thankful for you. You are the reason that I do what I do. You're the reason that I'm living out my calling by investing into ministry leaders like you. And so I'm thankful for you. I'm praying that you make a difference, that you impact your community, you advance the kingdom of God, you develop your team. One of the greatest things that I want for you, though, in 2019 in particular, is I want you to be healthy. I want you to have just a healthy lifestyle. I want you to have more time with your family, more time with your hobbies and your friends. I want you to live life outside of ministry, because you are more than just the ministry that you fill, more than the position that you fill, more than the church that you're at. You are a valuable member of the kingdom of God, and God has so much more for you than just the weekly grind of ministry. And so if you ever just need someone to give you a pep talk or encourage you, or even if you're just at a point where you're like, I'm done, I'm out, shoot me an email, send me a text, send me a message, something, because I would love to just have a conversation with you. Because if I can help any ministry leaders from walking away, then that's the goal. And so stick in there, be strong, let me help you any way I can, and thank you again for joining me on this Maximize Your Ministry sessions, and I look forward to the next ones that we do. Keep an eye out for any other sessions coming in the future. All right, have a great night. We'll see you later.